out for someone.
Got several names.
William H. Bonney, Kid Antrim,
And Billy the Kid.
My family came to America on the promise of fair treatment for all.
You have been arrested for murder.
It was self-defense.
I like outlaws.
Believe me, I really do not want to kill you. Make sure he gets a decent burial.
You can run for a long time.
Hi, I'm Paul Sarossy, cinematographer, and I'm here today to talk about Billy the Kid with director Otto Bathurst and colorist Mark Kueper.
Hey everybody, I'm Otto Bathurst, as Paul said, the director of Billy the Kid. Thrilled to be here to chat to you about this production, and we have Mark here as well. So, Paul, where do we start? This epic journey.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because it's like a year later, and one has to plunge back into the past to remind oneself what the adventure that we were on. But to me, it was very exciting to be involved with Billy the Kid because it was my first Western, or the first time working in this genre, and it had so many new challenges.
Yeah, same. First Western for me as well. You know, and first time shooting in Canada. Lots of firsts for me. So yeah, it was, and then we had all the extra challenges of making it during. I remember it was like right in the middle of COVID and during the lockdowns, and even trying to get into the country to film it was a challenge in itself in the first place. You know, and I remember how I don't know if you remember it, Paul, how we were sort of like, because I got in and then I was put into quarantine, and we had to have these meetings kind of, you know, outside across a garden fence, and I think we only actually got like 6 days on the ground to prep this brand new epic Western with you. So we prepped a new show in we did all the location hunting kind of remotely. I remember that, and then we had this whirlwind 6 days where we put the whole show together. So yeah, it was quite
crazy.
Quite the deep end.
Yeah, no, I have this vivid recollection of speaking over a hedge to each other to try to get a handle on things, and it's amazing that you were able to do what you did, given it was all based on photographs and Zoom and you know all the limitations that COVID threw at you. So and of course the thing is, it can be done. It's just, it really shouldn't have to be done that way.
No, it's funny. It's like, because I'm on a new job now. Everybody's complaining that we've only got 8 weeks prep or something like that, and I'm going, 8 weeks? You know, that's easy. You know, it's like, yeah.
It's a luxury.
Exactly. No, but I mean, listen, we were so incredibly supported by the amazing production design team, John Blackie and Bill Ives and all his crew, and you know, and yeah, that's what's amazing about sort of making a show like this, I think, in Calgary, is that so many of the crew have ventured into this world before, you know, and have an understanding of it. You know, that said, that was also, I think that was what was interesting about that, was there was, you know, with respect to the genre, a sort of, you know, a re-education that kind of you and I both wanted to do as well, because we were very keen that it shouldn't just feel like another cookie cutter, you know, Western. And so there was a lot. I remember a lot of our process was just as much about what we don't want it to look like or what we don't want it to feel like, as much as what we do want it to do. You know, we had all these kind of rules about, like, you know, no straw and no wagon wheels and no kind of like all these kind of, you know, these tropes of the Western genre. Because, you know, from the story point of view, we wanted to sort of see it very much through Billy's eyes. You know, it was Billy's journey that he was going on from New York out west, and that kind of sort of wonderment and awe at the scale of this place and the adventure, because he did see it as an adventure to start with before it all started going wrong, south. And I think that was part of it. It was like, how do we make this world feel new, not just for Billy, but also for an audience? And that was a big part of it.
Yeah, well, it's so true that working in any period situation, you're confronted with this issue of are you making a new story told in an old period, or are you looking for ways to see the world in this old way? And it's quite a thing to determine what's the best way to see that world. And I think you're absolutely right. The most interesting was to try to see it through his eyes, through the eyes of a child, and the wonderment of it, because simultaneously he's seeing these absolutely horrible things that for most adults sort of would end their adventure, and for him it's starting his adventure.
Totally, and how to represent this, and let's face it, the genre is well trodden and is well known and has been sort of done by many epic filmmakers and cinematographers with epic budgets, and epic amounts of time, so it was quite a challenge to sort of, with all the constraints that we had, and we didn't have a massive budget, to try and render it in a new way. That was quite a challenge.
One of the sort of new ways of trying to see things was by finding these really old lenses. There was a kind of to me, this amazing window into the world of the 1840s when we came across the Petzval lenses, which I think immediately struck a chord with yourself and myself and everyone who got a chance to play with them. And in a funny kind of way, they imposed a huge visual constriction, but that sort of formed the guidepost for us visually in so many ways.
No, if you had to kind of pinpoint it to what was the one singular choice that kind of affected the show the most, I think it was choosing the Petzval. I completely adored them and loved them, and I'm just about to start shooting another big series in the UK, and we're using the Petzval lenses again. I love them, and one of the things I loved about them the most was the fact that there are only two of them. So you've only got two lenses to choose from, and I love that, because I find the whole filmmaking process of kind of, standing around and getting the viewfinder out and, should we do the 14 or the 18 or the 23 or the 27 or the, it just, for me, just kills so much of the immediacy and the sort of the life of the production. And I completely loved these lenses. I thought they were incredible, but I also just loved the fact that every morning, the camera team, we had two cameras. The camera team would put the 58 and the 85 on, and that was pretty much, how we'd roll for most of the day. I mean, we did sometimes, when we were doing bigger wide shots, use the Panavision vintage lenses. But I mean, I would say at least, I don't know what you'd say, Paul, at least 70 or 80% of the film was shot just on these two lenses. Which is incredible.
Yeah, like it's funny where on paper it seems like what a limit, our hands are tied behind our back, but in fact I felt ultimately we were liberated by knowing that that's dealt with.
No, 100%, and then the speed at which we were able. I remember it so well. We had these two in absolutely incredible operators, working for us, and Tim Milligan and Kirk Chiswell, and the speed at which they were moving, because if you wanted to swap lenses, you didn't swap lenses. They just changed the cameras around, and we had these amazing ACs. Shane, I remember Shane and Chris as well. Shane Gardner, Chris Bang, and we had these cameras. They stripped them down. We were shooting it on the mini Alexas, and we stripped them down to the absolute kind of raw basics, and it was phenomenal just to be moving these cameras at such speed and just chucking them between each other. And we were doing crazy amounts of setups every day. It was and that was fantastic. And I think that really kind of gave it an energy and a life, that because it was a brutal schedule, and I think that really gave it an energy and a life, and I think really informed not just the look, but the whole kind of vibe of the show. And they're such unusual looking lenses, and then when you're doing the big close-ups, and it really helps you get into Billy's POV and really helped you get inside. It made it feel very intimate. I love them, absolutely love them.
Yeah,
amazing.
No, absolutely. And I remember Shane, focus puller, absolutely brilliant. His work, the way he was commenting how because these were kind of new lenses to him, it was a process of discovering what they could and couldn't do, and they reacted differently at different T-stops, and whether you're at night or in the day. And the place where focus could be changed depending on the distances. So it was almost like he was handed a new musical instrument and he was discovering how to play it. And he quickly was a master of it.
Yeah, 100% don't use the Petzvals unless you have a master AC like Shane Godden. That would be my top tip, because he was incredible. I mean, they both were. Him and Chris, they were both incredible at what it was just amazing. And we were shooting, like, if you think about it, we were shooting wide open the whole time with sometimes just a candle, and that was it. It was incredible. I mean, you were phenomenally and brilliantly brave, and they were amazing and not drowning in that bravery. It was fantastic.
I think everyone came together on this project, and everyone knew what was trying to be done, and everyone really took off in there, with Shane and Tim, and kind of doing things that perhaps they wouldn't be used to doing on other shows. So it was really, really exciting. It was like something was being born.
Yeah, I've done a lot of shows. I've never seen a sort of synergy that those guys, those guys sort of got with the way they rolled, as you say, Tim. And I've never seen a kind of sort of process that was so fluid and so perfectly, it's sort of embracing of what the story needed. It was fantastic. It was that part of it was great. But big thumbs up to the Petzval lenses.
Yeah.
But anyway, we just had a question in, Paul, in the chat box I've just seen. Says, how did you get involved with the show, being your first Western? How did you get the gig? Well, good question. You'd think that they wouldn't let two Western virgins loose on a show like Really Good. I think, I can't speak for Paul, but certainly, from my perspective, I think that was part of the attraction. Actually, was like, how do we reinvent this genre? And and perhaps if you've got somebody who's done lots of Westerns before, they might find it harder to reinvent, to sort of reimagine it a little bit. And I came in with, I don't know anything about horses. I don't know anything about the Western. I've watched lots of Westerns, of course, but I think that was actually sort of kind of worked to favor, because then you are coming at it with fresh eyes, and you are. And then certainly some of the questions we asked, raised some eyebrows, and they were like, "Yeah, you could do that. Why not? We've never done it before, but hey, why not?" So I think that was part of the attraction, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true that in Calgary in particular, you're surrounded by this heritage of the Western and the experience and people on every level technically, and the wranglers of the animals, and they have this history that we were sort of almost in a slight ignorance embracing and becoming part of, and they totally embraced looking at this well-established world in a different way, and it was really thrilling.
Yeah, I remember like when I first got there, when I finally got out of quarantine, and I just been reminded by that still that was just up there. Because we were spending a lot of time on the road, and I really wanted it to feel like, there you go, I really wanted it to feel like a road movie, and I didn't want to have these kind of big Russian arms, that sort of did these sort of classical sweeping shots of kind of, I wanted to feel, I like those movies, when you're in a road movie and you could tell, when the cameraman's just had to sort of get in the passenger seat and kind of sort of squeeze in and sort of try and get a kind of a French over while the guy's driving. And I love that. It just feels so immediate. Once you start getting on kind of complicated low loaders and that kind of stuff, to me, it takes the immediacy and kind of magic out of it. So we invented this kind of this rig, basically, where we built this kind of running board all around the deck of the carriage, and basically we shot all those traveling shots kind of live with the cameramen, half in the wagon, half out the wagon. We had the Ronin rig, we worked out that the Ronin rig kind of on the wagon worked the best because, what we struggled with, I remember it really clearly, was if we put the Ronin or any head on an arm that was on a separate vehicle, then when either moved, you got this kind of very, very oscillating horizon. Whereas when the camera was actually on the wagon as well, no matter how much the wagon moved, at least they were moving together. So you didn't get this kind of strange kind of swimming horizon. And it was brilliant. I mean, it sort of slightly freaked the grips out and slightly freaked everybody out to start with. But it ended up, look at them, that's the rig there. It ended up being this really cool rig, and it went everywhere with us. And, it worked super well. Sometimes we pulled. Go on.
Yeah, no, it was also quite a discovery, and it's such a basic one that wagons really go at walking speed. It's almost overkill if you have big vehicles for the cameras to follow. I remember your mantra was to keep it simple, and very often there were these amazing complex solutions to things that wait a minute, what's the simple way to do this? And that always ended up being best.
They had all these kind of tracking vehicles lined up, and we ended up sort of not using any of them. And I remember we used the Ronin on 2 scaffold bars, like a goalpost, and these incredible grips, just because, as you say, the horses only walk in speed. So if we were doing any walk and talks, the grips would just goalpost the Ronin and just walk along with them, so which was amazing because it meant we could go on any terrain. And, just from a production point of view, we were able to move so much quicker and so much more dynamically. So incredible crew all around that supported this, quite sort of basic sort of Heath Robinson way of making the film. But, I'm sure that's what gives it that kind of sort of indie immediate vibe, because if we started using big fancy toys, I think it would start to feel just like a sort of, anyway. So that was cool.
Yeah,
really cool.
No, it's true, and it is true that in prep, we did have certain films to reference, like McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Heaven's Gate, and films that sort of it gave us a world view of this place and time, but obviously a totally different way of approaching things. So. But it definitely helped in terms of referencing certain interior environments, like the brothel and the saloon and others like that.
Love that glass they put in the window, that wobbly glass.
Yeah.
So
it's
cool.
Gorgeous.
That was John's. That was the art department's big thing. I love this because it just really sets the atmosphere. This is like, okay, this is clearly not your classic.
Well, and I remember technically the issue is how could we go from floor level to head level in one go, and that really wasn't a Steadicam. That's where the grips holding the pipe rig was perfect.
Can I get you something?
Not yet.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, Paul? Because you're working in such a sort of almost cliche genre. It's got so many tropes. So many classic vibes to it.
Sure.
I remember in this scene, kind of going, okay, this is the one scene where we're really going to give them everything they expect. This is your bulk. This is your classic kind of sort of cool Western scene. And we've kind of, there must be at least 5 or 6 tropes that we've ripped off in this scene. It's like this is quintessential kind of Western filmmaking. But then contrasting that with once we get into Billy's POV, making that a much more intimate kind of sort of much more of a sort of indie road movie vibe, you know, and a much more of a character study. Because, you know, Westerns can often be sort of quite held back, you know, from a viewpoint, and quite sort of cold.
Just tell me.
And we really got in with Billy and made it into a very, very kind of intimate character study, which it really was. You know, I mean, it was basically a story about a kid growing up and becoming Billy the Kid. The fact that it was set in the West was almost like a byproduct. It's not really a Western in that respect. It's a story about a kid at that time who happens to be traveling to the West of America. And I think that was sort of a big part of kind of what we were trying to sort of do, and make sure we didn't kind of fall into those tropes of, you know, the classic shots. But I remember very well with that opening sequence kind of going, you know, come on, let's give them the juice.
Yeah, do it all in one. But it's so true that,
it's good. Go on.
Well, no, I was just going to say that that it began in that sequence and carried through, I think, with the younger Billy, the whole notion of focusing in the foreground, so that where normally the action is in the distance and one should be crisp on that, it's actually you're with the foreground person, and when we did that with Billy the child, you really that helped accentuate the notion of being with him, seeing the world through his eyes, and it's funny because it's not a subjective point of view. It's actually kind of objective simultaneously. So it did become kind of an approach that was really interesting, I thought.
Because it was very challenging. You know, I remember it really clearly. It was like when you've only got 6 days prep, and I've never worked with you before. You know, neither of us had done a Western before. Most of the locations, you know, we visited once, you know, or twice perhaps before we filmed there. So we were really kind of thinking on our feet. And I think it was a really interesting dynamic that I know at times it was challenging, but I was constantly incredibly appreciative of of you in it, because, you know, and I remember it was, you know, I remember Tim, you know, the A camera operator was very much part of that collaboration. I think sort of the way the three of us worked, I don't really see how it could have worked any other way, because it was such a limited, you know, we just didn't, you know, we were arriving and we were kind of going, okay, wow, what are we doing here? And you were kind of sort of taking care of, you know, the lighting and sorting that out. And I was sort of, you know, trusting you with that, but then also choreographing the shots and the setups with Tim. And, you know, Tim was taking care of that. And I think if it, you know, because we were, you know, it was a very, I loved it, you know, and actually sort of I thought it was an amazing collaboration, you know, and I don't see how we could have delivered that show with that schedule, with that little prep in any other way. But I mean, we're very blessed to have you and to have Tim, you know, sort of working in such a, I guess, kind of accepting way. I mean, it was like, you know, it's like, okay, cool. You just, you know, handing parts of the production over to the other and kind of going, you know, because this wasn't the time or the space for everybody to get involved in every conversation. And I don't know how you felt about that, Paul, but I mean, I don't know whether you enjoyed that or found that difficult, but I hadn't worked that way before, but I was very appreciative of the fact that it did work that way, because I don't see any other way how it could have worked.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think a big ingredient as well was the art department and what they brought to us. Like you'd get out of the van in the morning and there would be this amazing set to work with, this view, this location. It was, like you say, it's kind of a gift that we were given every morning, and so that was enormous in terms of the things to work with between yourself and Tim and myself, and so it was thrilling because it wasn't a blank canvas. There were things there to enjoy with the camera.
No, I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, the choices that John was our production designer, and Bill, who was his sort of his right-hand man, and also production designer Bill Ives and John Blackie. I mean, just absolutely out of this world, incredible, and really, really challenging because, you know, we didn't have the budget to build whole new sets and whole new worlds. So we were going on to backlots that have been used in countless shows before, for quite a lot of the stuff. So how do you redefine that? How do you, and they really did. I mean, they really kind of created this very, very unique Billy world and made some, you know, I mean, the main sort of incredible, I mean, they made tons of choices, but the one I remember so well was just sort of stripping all the color out of the buildings, and we painted most of them, you know, as sort of a blue-gray, and we took all the signage off, nearly all the buildings, and just those moments where you just, you know, because you're so used to kind of seeing the swinging sign and, you know, and the multicolored sort of faded buildings, and, you know, and just those very, very brave kind of sort of monochromatic choices that they made were spectacular. And, you know, so it was an incredible partnership. And then, you know, and then behind the scenes, I mean, the absolute magic that kind of Ehud, the first AD, and his crew were kind of putting up with and juggling and firefighting. Because, as I say, it was, you know, when you have that little time to prep a show and you're making something that challenging, you know, and the budget is that lean and slim. I mean, you need an AD department and a team behind the scenes who are just kind of, you know, and we would change. I remember this exact day, actually, that's on the camera. You know, we had this whole setup. It was for the hanging scene. And we had the whole thing planned to shoot the hanging first in the morning, but it was raining in the morning. So we switched the whole day completely around. And it ended up being beautiful because it ended up meaning that the hanging scene we shot right at the end of the day. And, you know, we can maybe play it even, you know, the shots of the horses riding into town with this incredible low light, you know, coming through it. But, you know, the sort of flexibility of those ADs and the production team behind to sort of do these big shifts that were going on the whole time, you know, and probably hundreds more that I never even knew about. You know, so it was a very, very impressive collaboration, which it has to be when when you've got such a limited budget, and you just haven't got, you can't just sort of stop and stand around and talk about it. You know, you've got to be filming it all. You know, oh, here we go. Yeah, look at that low light. It's incredible. You know, and obviously we shot this completely the wrong way around just to make sure the low light was, you know, in.
Yeah, in a funny way, the rain was a blessing. It kind of
yeah, it was. It pushed us. Yeah, because we had this. We planned to do this sort of first, you know, in the day, but you know, and we'd never have got that light. So I remember it was raining, so we came inside and did some interiors while it was raining. This next shot, you know, we shot. So I remember Billy wasn't meant to be coming in, so we had to get him out of bed. And we had to run him down because he wasn't meant to be coming in for this shot. So we shot. It was raining outside for this shot. All this stuff. So we had to wake him up and drive him down to location and then this stuff we did in the evening. So this is all done. It's raining outside. And then. And by the way, this is a great moment to bring in Mark, our colorist, because this scene was all over the place. I mean, it was, you know, some of it was, you know, in a grey, rainy morning, and then in the evening it was a sort of, you know, low lit orange magic hour. Quite how he managed to stream, you know. Anyway, I'll let Mark talk about that. But yeah, it's a piece of magic from Mark.
Well, that was a challenge for sure. But I remember having those conversations with you guys because so many of the notes we were getting is it's too warm, it's too yellow, it's too whatever. But then getting into this scene, it's the only way it could go. It was going to be, let's embrace the sunrise, and what we were making it. So in the end, I think we never had any problems in terms of any shots there that, you know, didn't work out that we were disappointed with. You know, it being all over the place. I think in the end, it's pretty solid.
No, I mean, I could talk for hours about the whole grade generally. I mean, but yeah, it's interesting what you say there, Mark, about how generally the vibe was to stay away from the quintessential kind of sort of sepia warm, sort of vintage, you know, vintage Western look, and give it more of that kind of McCabe and Mrs. Miller, you know, punch. And if you watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller, it's incredibly kind of colourful, you know, and contrasty, and got an amazing you know, I mean, I don't think we've got the clip, but I remember, you know, so well the scene in the, you know, in the brothel, you know, the sort of the redness of that, you know, and just, I mean, I remember watching McCabe. I think it was your idea, Paul, to have a look at it, you know, and it was, you know, it's because it's very interesting. I mean, you know, when you look at, you know, across the board of the westerns, it's a very, very sort of limited genre as far as its look. I mean, you know, there really is the western look, and there aren't many that have kind of, you know, there are the more kind of rock and roll westerns, but I mean, but most of them stay very faithfully kind of in that color space. And
Right.
you know, we definitely wanted for it to have that more Heaven's Gatey, McCabe, Mrs. Miller, more kind of sort of, you know, vintage vibe to it, but still sort of not feel kind of oldie woldy and, you know, and sort of out of date. But you should talk more about it, Mark, really, because you found it.
Well, that's definitely, you know, when you're looking at the sets and the wardrobes being largely in the brown zone, you know, the ask was to how are we going to get some color separation in here, and color in general, which, to your point, you didn't want it to be a desaturated vibe, except for, I remember the note about, you know, early days of shooting were too green, and we wanted to make sure we were getting rid of too much of the vibrance there and keep the dusty feel.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when we were scouting, I was going, listen, guys, we're not making a tourist video for Calgary. This is all like, you know, it's all just with such an incredible countryside that it almost felt like kind of, it didn't feel scary. It didn't feel kind of, you know, it felt just like beautiful. I want to come here camping. You know, it was, you know, if I was Billy the Kid, I'd go, great,
right.
You know, it's, you know, a holiday.
And we discussed.
We should play this. We should play this clip from the beginning.
Yeah.
You should play this clip from the beginning. But before you play it, this is classic, because this was a beautiful, warm, sunny day. You know, the river was gently sort of, you know, lapping down the river. You know, trying to make this feel kind of, you know, scary and have jeopardy. You know, you did an incredible job on this one, Mark. So did the VFX department, actually, because, you know, they put a lot more rapids into this water. The water was a very gentle day, but yeah, I mean, this has got a really specific look.
Get the horse! We have to save the cases! It's all we have!
And you're right, getting rid of all, you know, trying to make it dark and scary. And in the cutting, I think it helps too that it wasn't necessarily a very dangerous river on the day.
It certainly was not. It was. I mean, I remember the kid who, you know, Jonah Collier, the absolute genius actor who played young Billy. He spent the whole day in the river because he was having such a lovely time. He was just hanging out in between takes. In between takes, he was just swimming around in the river. It was such a gorgeous day. And I remember his best mate who plays his brother. You know, they became really, really good mates. But his brother is in the wagon ahead that didn't fall in the river. And his brother was kept on saying to me all day long, "Can I get in the river? Can I get in the river?" And I go, "No, dude, sorry, your wagon doesn't fall in the river. You can't get in the river." And he was standing there in his hot kind of wool trousers, watching his mate swimming around all day, having a laugh.
That was also one of the times or scenes that we were able to go with our you know, whiter skies, you know, which I know in the design. Luckily, you guys got to shoot a bit of test footage on the location, on the set, out in Calgary, I'm trying to say, where we did some look development. I think that really helped start the conversation about, you know, what the design was going to be. And I think in the beginning, largely, we were going to go with a much paler look in the skies, but it sticks out to me watching that scene because we got to keep it there because it was supposed to be a threatening day. But we ended up pushing a lot of blue in the skies because, you know, there was notes about, you know, we need things to be more colorful, which we fought against a little bit. But I remember Paul auditioning a polarizer on those test days, and you were like, no, we don't want to go that way. We're gonna go au natural. Yeah. In the end,
I think
I didn't. Go on, Paul.
No, I was just going to say that I totally agree that being able to shoot a little bit of test material in prep with the little time we had was an enormous leap for all of us, I think, in terms of discovering what we wanted to see or what we didn't want to see, and what direction to head down.
Yeah, I remember that where the Petzl lenses conversation, and how everyone fell in love with it. That was the first time I had seen them. And I also remember, we had to come up with a recipe for the odd time you didn't use them to emulate that feel. I don't know if you remember, we did try to do some.
I do. I remember you had like a sort of Petzl mat, didn't you?
Yeah, we came up with a recipe to kind of emulate what was happening on the edges there, on the vintage lenses.
Hey Mark, I might need you to send me that. I might need you to send me that for the job I'm doing now. We're gonna need exactly the same thing.
Well, it's that's doable. It helped keep things in the vibe.
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was seamless
on the wide shots, especially. But and then we did some sky replacing too on some stuff that was, I don't know, maybe Paul, you remember? I can't remember if it was your episode or not. But later on, because there was some just blank skies and very long conversations, so we were able to slide in some fluffy clouds here and there and some blue just to keep it interesting. And again, with the philosophy being, let's not go with the postcard look. Sometimes, and everywhere you point the camera in Calgary out in the wilderness looks great. So it wasn't like it was difficult, but in the end, I think it was a decent choice to keep some of that, when needed, because it did look amazing, the vistas out there.
Yeah, it's like hard to combat or resist what's given to you. It's so beautiful. Like sometimes you have to take care not to be completely accepting the sheer beauty of it. You have to sort of uglify it a bit. But I remember when we did the night scene where the father and son are talking. And of course that's a story point that there's stars in the sky, which of course there weren't. They were added later, but it's these small ingredients that complete the picture.
We wanted to see the detail in the mountains in the background, so you couldn't shoot it too late. So it was kind of a dusk shoot day, or even quite a bit day, wasn't it? We had
we sort of took advantage of the last sort of glimpse of dusk, and that by the time night fell, we were into the close-ups.
Right, which was a bit later and darker, but I think in the end, it certainly must have been dark enough because the lamp lights are reading very strongly in here. So too much into the day, we wouldn't have got that, even though I know we enhanced it. But I remember those stars were a big conversation about how much to see them or not see them.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's sort of that balance of realism versus, it's a kind of special scene, a special situation, and how much do you enhance or resist enhancing, because we now live in a day and age where everything is possible, and half the job is to resist.
I think you're right, Paul. But I mean, we're also, as you say, this room, there is a sort of, I don't want to say fantasy element, but there is a kind of heightened element to sort of being, in the POV of this boy, and I definitely wanted to sort of play that notion of kind of like what would it, sort of the magic and the awe and the wonderment, and everything's bigger, everything's brighter, the skies are brighter, the thing, and he's having this incredible scene with his dad who's about to die, who's telling him that he is a star and, he is a reflection of the cosmos and the galaxy and all this amazing stuff that is, would have resonated with him. And indeed, there's a great scene in episode 2 where older Billy's at a real crossroads in his life, and he sits on the roof, and of where he's staying, and looks up at the stars again, and I think it was great that we went sort of, slightly kind of over the top of the stars, because they really landed, and you go, wow, look at that night. And to be true, it was amazing. Where we were filming that, what's it called? The place we filmed it.
In Drumheller. Drumheller?
Drumheller, that's it. Drumheller, well done.
Yeah.
And I remember kind of when it wrapped, when we shoot, and then you'd wrap, and then you'd still be hanging out, and then all the lights would go off, and you'd look up to the stars, and it was just like, wow. It was proper kind of desert stars up there. I remember one night particularly just being blown away by what nature served up. So I don't think we did overcook it, actually.
Yeah, no, it was spectacular. That good. I so remember all the incredible faces that we had for when we did the scene where they arrive in the town in Drumheller, and just again, the AD team, like they didn't just find extras; they found these spectacular faces that you wanted to linger on them. And it wasn't one or two; it was like the entire background of characters was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, that's what's amazing about a show like this is like, you really get to, especially when you sort of get back to the edit suite, or you get back to, a year later like this, and you look back on it, and you really get to kind of appreciate, what the ADs have done, what Carol Case in costume has done, and she was the head of the costume department, and these just amazing. I remember, Michael, there's a guy called Michael Devaney did our hair for us, and Joanne Jacobson who did the makeup, and all their teams, not just them, because when you're into the essays and that kind of stuff, it's the rest of the team and everybody that's doing it, and the collaboration of something like this, it was I think it was sort of the time, I mean, of all the shows I've done, because of the limited prep, I became more aware than I've ever been of kind of like, wow, this is, I mean, I always am, very, very conscious of kind of how it truly is sort of, a collaboration. But, when we weren't even able to kind of sort of prep together, or do it all, we were doing it all on Skypes, we were doing it all through photos, we were doing it all through, then you really need, you really do rely on your team, so it was pretty amazing collaboration.
Yeah. And it's funny, just looking at that clip with the river, the sort of disaster as they're trying to cross the river, and that was a fascinating situation where there was one piece of kit, the tool with the techno crane, and there was a whole debate about affording it, or could it be put physically in the place it had to be to get the shot, and that's truly one of those things where the right tool, it's worth fighting for, because we kind of were able to accomplish that day because we had that, and obviously there's so many other ways you can shoot a scene, but that definitely helped us with that scene.
100%. We would never ever have completed it without it. I mean, it was like, the speed at which because just to sort of inform the listeners, we basically built this sort of massive platform on the edge of the river. It was an incredible kind of construction by our grip and rigging team, and we built this platform sort of, a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 meters out into the river, and then put this, I can't remember what it was it 75? I can't remember, was it 75 or 50 foot? I can't remember. Techno on it, and then off that we were able to get literally everywhere, and get right down onto the river. But you can see from there how calm the river is, and what a great job the VFX team did in making that river look more scary than it was. But yeah, that was quite a construction. And as you say, Paul, there are moments where you really do need to make sure you've got the right toy, because if we'd been messing it. We had a lot to shoot that day, and if we'd been messing around with camera boats and all that kind of stuff, you know, we would never have made the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's on the one hand, it's an expensive tool, but on the other hand, it's the perfect tool, and it saves you in countless ways, and you get a great scene from it.
We should talk also. About kind of like what when you look back on it, Paul and Mark, kind of what your sort of number one takeout from it is, or I mean, what you learned on it. Now, I feel like I learned so much on this job, just around kind of sort of not tons, but just like the whole process and the simplification of it, and how that's what I really, really appreciate. I'd just come off a massive sci-fi production. I've been doing Halo out in Budapest, which was like, $250 million worth of, incredible scale, and this was the absolute kind of other end of it. And I love, I really, really appreciated and kind of the simplicity, and how you just, if you've got a great story and you've got great actors and you've got incredible location and productions, like everything we talked about, and you really you often don't need all that stuff, and I really enjoyed sort of stripping it back, and how people were accepting of that and embrace that, and go, right, these are our toys. These are the lenses, these are the cameras. Let's go. And I found that very, very kind of very liberating, I would say, and very interesting as a process. And that's definitely a big thing that I learned from it, and will take forward. Is that, does it really need to be? And it's certainly what I'm doing. I'm doing the exact same thing on this next job that I'm doing, which is a sort of Arthurian, period piece, Arthurian legend. But we're doing the very, very same. We're challenging each other the whole time of like, do we really need that? Can we do it? So how do you keep it simple so that it then becomes about the look and the lighting and the performances, rather than, I'm not saying, kit and toys are bad. They're great when they're needed, but I think sometimes we can get a bit lost in that part of the process. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, no, that's totally true. That if you can do it in one way, which is absolutely simple, why not do it that way? We get so seduced by these amazing toys that are available to us. Where you hear stories of techno cranes sitting on sets for weeks at a time, and why you're only doing shots almost for the tool rather than the other way around. So it is definitely a great thing to keep things as simple as possible.
It's a cool discipline. It's really interesting. It's a really, and it's, yeah, I loved it. It was a big learning for me, because, as I say, the last 2 or 3 productions I've been on have been, much bigger, and if the money's there and the toys are there, you kind of go, okay, well, let's use them. But when they're not there, you have to kind of really think about different ways of skinning the cat. It was fun.
I think keep it simple applies, in the post world as well, I guess. Thinking about the grade, there were times when, you lose a little bit of perspective when you're hearing notes from networks or producers. And I remember, Paul, you came in and said, we can't, if it's lamplight indoors at night, that's the one color you're going to get. That's it. It's not like we can make it more, we can't make it less yellow or less sepia. We started trying to fight how warm it was in there, and, wanted to try and find more color separation. But again, it's one of those times when, if the first instinct is, well, the simple one, as you pointed out, it has to be, if it's lamplit, we're going to go with this warm feeling. I think with the atmosphere in the room, we were able to sneak in a bit of color in the black for a little bit of separation. But we definitely had to dial it back to get, make it feel right, to make it feel believable. So I don't know what you guys think. I thought it was visually interesting in the end.
Yeah, no, it's true that there's the there's the whole palette that's available to you, and to what degree do you go down the path of monochrome? But it is a point that if you have kind of a one color light source, then is that kind of determining things? Well, I mean, the scene that I thought was really interesting in terms of being able to have a different to have a range of contrast in terms of color was the brothel. Just because we had the predominant red light, that was the sort of signature of that place. But then we had the candle and lantern yellow, more yellowy, golden look. So in a way, that was a world of two colors that were dancing with each other.
Yeah, and a lot of time, in the recipe, we were doing a bit of, let's explore, getting some cool warm dichotomy going on throughout the palette. But when you have those big warm scenes, it's a nice, it's a bit of a vacation from the blue world, for lack of a better, and then to go back and forth, I think it made it visually interesting, so that you can not, even with an interesting look on a scene, to go, push and pull on that dichotomy, I think was good. Like, it needed, when it's warm, you feel it, and when it's cool, you feel it, and you feel emotionally different because of it. So I think that's why we do it, I guess.
And Mark, I thought also you applied a wonderful texture. There was a kind of unity to the images, because obviously we're spending some of the story inside and nighttime, but also there's a huge part of it is outside, and it's kind of in the hands of the gods to some degree, and you really pulled that all together. To me, it was texture is the word that most well describes the way you unified things. It was really great.
Yeah, there was some big scenes, the cattle crossing the river, stuff like that. I don't know if you guys remember that one. I thought that was a pretty big, epic outdoor scene, or any of the, wrangling horses scenes. And
again, was done entirely remotely. Was the whole editing process. We had the incredible Laura Johnston and also Dan Bracana editing the show, and the work they did in kind of sort of really finding that language that embraced the kind of the Billy POV and the Billy kind of vibe to getting inside his head, and I mean, I did an amazing job, because it's quite, in places it's quite different from the script, and they definitely juggled it around and really tried to find that language. It's challenging, because basically it's especially the first two episodes. Once older Billy arrives and you get into a more linear story, then it became simpler, I think. But certainly those first two episodes, which are kind of sort of, there's a lot of just, traveling and watching and traveling and watching. And then these sort of episodic moments happening to young Billy on the road. And the way they tied it all together, and that whole design of kind of sort of, because initially in the script, the opening scene where Billy kills the guy, the bounty hunter, in the script, it goes all the way to the killing in the opening scene. But they did this brilliant thing of kind of holding back what happened in that opening scene and kind of dropping seeds of it in. There's a great scene where the old man is teaching Billy how to shoot, and you get a little bit more of the future. And then at the end, when he's in the market and he picks up his gun, young Billy picks up a gun from a gun store in the market and holds it up against this nasty cowboy who's been leering his mother. Again, they kind of seeded more of kind of the future of what this guy's going to become. And you really understood the story, I think, of kind of like, these pivotal moments in this young kid's life, and sort of the truth and absoluteness that the young kid sort of held, even as a young kid, was carried through. And I love that, because I thought Jonah Collier, who played young Billy, was just so spectacular. I wanted to sort of really feel him in the older Billy, but also to understand, what a strong impact the incredible feminine character of his mother and the nature and the stars and the cosmos and all these things were all really part of the ingredients that made the older Billy. And that actually, you know, because Billy the Kid's always been sort of thought of as this kind of just, you know, renegade, lunatic outlaw, but actually he was so much more, he had so much more integrity and so much more absoluteness to him than that. So I thought that was, I mean, I was in awe of the way they really kind of delivered that and edited that in and crafted that in, so that even when you're in episode 2 or 3, you still felt the younger Billy and you still felt these kind of formative years in him and felt like how he was being influenced and held by these standards in his life, you know, these absolutes in his life. It was really amazing piece of work, and so big respect to those two as well. It's an amazing collaboration, the whole thing. It was quite the journey. Thank me so much. Thanks to you, Paul, and to you, Mark, for just creating, you know, with all the limitations we've been talking about, to create something that I think we had a really genuine and as really genuine, unique look to it is incredible. You know, it's spectacular. There's a message just come up in the chat box saying, where do we watch Billy the Kid? I'm not sure where it's on. I don't know. I'm in the UK, so I don't know where it is on in Canada. I think, what do you know, Mark?
It's on
do you know
Epix. The streaming service is called Epix.
Epix, yeah, Epix.
Yeah, Epix. I'm not sure how that's correct or not.
Yeah. And then we've also got to make sure you all subscribe to the CSC YouTube channel to see this video and lots of other amazing videos of all sorts of brilliant filmmakers. So make sure you check into that as well.
Yeah, and it's really great to see you guys. It's like a year later, but it's.
I know. It's been on. Well, I never even met Mark, you know, because we only ever did it remotely. So it's just like, you know.
Oh, yeah.
We did. We didn't really touch on that, but yeah, you were across the pond and watching on an iPad while we were live in the room. Yeah.
I know. I'm used
Amazing
to this.
we got it done, yeah.
This is the only Mark I know. I don't even know if he's actually real. You know, he might not be.
He's real.
Thanks, guys.
He's real. But listen, it's great to see you both. Really, and thank you so much for everything that you both brought. I'm super proud of the production. It's a lot of fun. So it's great to see you. But
thank you.
For now, bye everybody. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.